had a great call with President Xi, and as you know, he approved the TikTok deal, and we're in the process. We have some great investors, some of the biggest in the world, American investors, great people, and we look forward to getting that deal closed.
Are you confident that the CCP won't be exerting control over TikTok?
Yeah, we're gonna have a very tight control. I want to thank President Xi because he was a gentleman, and we've just had a good relationship.
President Trump explaining more about the TikTok deal reached between the White House and Beijing after spending 2 hours on the phone with Chinese President Xi Jinping on Friday. Now, the Wall Street Journal reporting the president will approve the deal via executive order later this week, writing, quote, the algorithm that suggests content will get an overhaul, but users likely won't need to download a new app, according to a senior White House official. This is from the Wall Street Journal. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt further clarifying who is going to control the app. Watch this.
We are 100% confident that a deal is done. Now that deal just needs to be signed, and the president's team is working with their Chinese counterparts to do just that. This deal means that TikTok will be majority owned by Americans in the United States. There will be 7 seats on the board that controls the app in the United States, and 6 of those seats will be Americans. And the data and privacy will be led by one of America's greatest tech companies, Oracle, and the algorithm will also be controlled by America as well.
President Trump also says he's going to meet with Xi Jinping in person next month at the APEC summit in South Korea. That would be their first face-to-face sit-down since 2019. He posted about further plans on Truth Social. Here's what he wrote. I would go to China in the early part of next year, and that President Xi would likewise come to the United States at an appropriate time. Want to bring in Gatestone Institute Senior Fellow Gordon Chang. Gordon, your reaction in particular to President Trump saying, I'm going to go to Beijing.
Yeah, I'm not happy about the president going to Beijing. The reason is that the Chinese will spin that as a vassal going to the Grand Celestial Court. This is not just Communist Party diplomacy. This is Chinese diplomacy over the course of 2 millennia. I'm happy if he goes, but only after Xi Jinping comes to the United States. Now, I'm sure that President Trump doesn't believe that he's a vassal, but the point is that Chinese will tell others around the world that that is the case. And that will make it more difficult for President Trump to actually accomplish his goals because people will be believing the Chinese narrative. So I hope that President Trump does something that upsets that narrative. I'm positive that he'll do that, because he does assert America first.
But you also bring up worries about the algorithm on the TikTok deal. And I want to ask you about this because you said there are disturbing indications the most important aspect of the deal, control of the curation algorithm, will be unsatisfactory. What do you mean by that, Gordon?
Well, first of all, the algorithm will be licensed from China, according to Wall Street Journal reporting. And they say in the journal that U.S. engineers will work on it. That could be okay, but we need to see the details on that because the devil is in those details. This curation algorithm is critical because China has used it to exacerbate social divisions in the U.S., to meddle in our elections, to promote social ills like suicide and illicit drug use, and to promote Hamas and other terrorist groups. So clearly control is critical. Now, the thing that bothers me a little bit is that the Chinese Foreign Ministry, which had the official Beijing readout, has not confirmed that there was a deal. They just said that Chinese enterprises are free to negotiate with foreigners as long as they comply with Chinese law. And Chinese law prohibits the exportation of technology like the curation algorithm.
Well, it's because I'm assuming, my sense is that there are other things within the trade negotiations that the Chinese want, and you give on TikTok, you negotiate somewhere else, but we'll see what happens with those negotiations. Tiana Lodesh is on the set with us, Gordon. She had a question for you.
Yeah, Gordon, I wanted to ask about the actual law itself that Congress and Joe Biden passed last year and whether or not ByteDance maintaining a board seat, one of the 7 board seats, will even be compliant with the law. Because my understanding is that under Chinese law, if ByteDance has a board seat, you still have the intelligence sharing with the CCP. So does the deal, the infrastructure of the deal, does it even satisfy what is technically legally binding?
That's a great question. The law talks about divestiture. And under the deal, ByteDance will own something like 20% of the new TikTok. And it's not clear that that actually complies with the law. The thing about board control is, I think, a little bit different because board control is not mentioned in the federal law, but ownership is. The most important things, though, are going to be control of the data, because we don't want China to use the app to continue to steal the data of Americans, and the curation algorithm. So I focus on those two things rather than the ownership.
Okay, that's interesting that you say that. Well, again, more details are needed. I do want to ask you about this. South Korea's president is sounding the alarm on his country's economy, saying that U.S. investment demands in these stalled trade talks could send South Korea into a crisis, rivaling the 1997 meltdown. This is over the pledge of $350 billion. And here's what he said. Without a currency swap, if we, South Korea, were to withdraw $350 billion in the manner that the U.S. is demanding and invest all the money in the U.S., South Korea would face a situation as it had in the 97 financial crisis. That was through a translator. Gordon, what do you make of these comments?
I think they're overblown. Lee Jae-myung does not like the United States. When he was running for president in 2021, when he's trying to get the nomination of his party, he called American troops an occupying force. And more explosively, he blamed the United States for continued Japanese colonial rule. His government has been doing a number of things to undermine our treaty alliance with South Korea. And he's appointed a number of people in his cabinet who have views which are very pro-North Korean, very anti-U.S. So he's going to try to do anything to prevent a trade deal and also to prevent any sort of investment pact, because he doesn't want to strengthen the bonds between the United States and his country. The only fortunate thing in this whole story, Cheryl, is that the people of Korea like the United States. They like us more than they have in decades. And they've been taking to the streets to protest Lee Jae-myung's treatment of the U.S. So there's a lot going on here, but South Korea clearly is in turmoil, and our relations with South Korea that go back to the Korean War are very much in jeopardy.
Yeah, interesting that you say that. Yeah, I found those comments very interesting just because it's particularly with the whole Hyundai worker, drama that we had a week and a half ago. Real quick before you go, Gordon, not a lot of time, but we had this bipartisan group of lawmakers that visited China yesterday. This is Democratic Congressman Adam Smith leading the trip. They met with China's premier. Bilateral ties was the discussion. There hasn't been something like this since 2019. Apparently, they also discussed economic military cooperation. Military cooperation, Gordon. What do you make of this?
Well, everyone wants the two militaries to talk, but we have had established channels with the Chinese military, and they don't work. And the reason is that Chinese military officers won't pick up the phone until political leaders have decided critical questions. So mill-to-mill communications, it sounds great, but, in history, they just have not fulfilled their promise. I don't believe that we should be promoting this at this time, especially given a number of other factors. But, we'll sort of work this out. But we don't need congressmen going to Beijing right now. It absolutely sends the wrong signal.
Gordon Chang, great to see you as always. Thanks so much. A lot of ground covered with you today.